I'd like to call to order the Carson City Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee meeting for May 1st here at 5:30 p.m. in the CR room at Carson City Community Center. I'd like to call this meeting to order and have a roll call.
Chairperson Wickstead?
Here.
Vice Chair Hanneman?
Here.
Member Barrett?
Here.
Member Justice?
Here.
Member Kennedy?
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. At this time, the public is invited to comment on any and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Carson City Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item.
How much time do I have? 3 minutes? Anyway, it's okay, Ronnie, I'll be quick. I'm Jed Block. I have the property at 112 North Curry Street, and with the facade program that you guys did, my $32,000 roof, I got it to come in at $28,000. You guys reimbursed me for $14,000, and I wanted to show you before and after picture of the building. Yeah. And here's what it looked like in 2004 when I bought it. I had to take down a 30-foot sign with 11 4-foot bulbs in there. Spent $30,000 stabilizing the building in the basement that you couldn't see. They had put a steeple over the original path, which you can see now in the top picture. Here's a shingle.
Go back to the mic.
So, yes, sir. I thought it was her. So this shingle was on the roof, and it was painted red, we think, from about 1896 to probably about 1966 when they put the wonderful asbestos roof on. So I just wanted to, after sitting up there in your spot for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, forever, I just wanted to say thanks and show you that redevelopment does work, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Jed.
Thank you, Jed, for being so brief. It looks wonderful.
Thank you.
That's pretty cool, and I can't imagine a roof being controversial as part of a facade improvement program, but I'm glad it got done.
Thank you.
Okay, now, are there any other public comments out there this evening? If not, we will move to approval of the minutes, and then I'd like to introduce a new member here. So for the minutes, February 6, 2017, I'd like to see if there's a motion out there to approve them.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of February 6, 2017 as
Second.
written.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Looks like unanimous. Okay. Okay. Actually, one abstention for Lee, who isn't here. And speaking of Lee, I'd like to introduce him. Lee Kennedy is the general manager of the Max Casino, and he has joined the Redevelopment Authority as of, what is it? This is his first meeting, so it would be, I guess, May of 2017. Lee, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much for offering me this position, Ronnie, and I look forward to serving. Thank you.
That's great, Lee. Thanks for joining and volunteering. We're really excited to have a member of the community such as yourself on the committee with us. Okay, with that, I think we can move on to the first agenda item here, 4 as the meeting items, and we'll move to 4A. For possible action to make a recommendation to the Redevelopment Authority regarding the expenditure of $10,000 from the fiscal year 2016-2017 special event funding budget of the Redevelopment Revolving Fund for the Carson City Fair. Lee?
Thank you. Good evening. Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. I'll give you an overview of this item. And I want to just note that there are 2 items on the agenda regarding special events. And this first one is for this current fiscal year budget for money left over. The next item on the agenda is for next year's budget. This is a request from the UNR Cooperative Extension for the Carson City Fair at Fuji Park, requesting $10,000. Lindsay's here from the Cooperative Extension, and she can answer your questions and tell you more about it. As I mentioned, I did want to note that there was $33,000 of the $60,000 that were available for special events already allocated, so there's $27,000 available in this year's budget. This event actually occurs in the next fiscal years, but we've been going back and forth on this and with our finance department. So these are for expenditures that are actually occurring in this fiscal year, which are supposed to be budgeted in this year then. So it's for advertising and the rental, paying for the tents and paying for things in this fiscal year. should come from this fiscal year's budget, so that's why the request is coming to you for this year's. And again, Lindsay's here to answer more questions. I'll finish my presentation with that.
Okay, Lindsay, would you like to come up? No. All right.
Is there a way to, oh, I don't have to turn it on. Good evening, Lindsay Chichester, Cooperative Extension for the record. How may I be of assistance?
Actually, Lindsay, I think the project is great, and I wish you lots of luck with it, so.
Thank you. We'll take all the luck we can.
One question for you.
Yes,
You
sir.
mentioned in your summary that was quite helpful about the history of this of the event. That in 2015, that the Board of Supervisors elected not to fund a similar event. Do you have any reason or background on why that was, or maybe someone on the staff or someone on our board has?
Well, that was a different time, different people, and there were some issues at the time, but this is a brand-new fair, right, Lindsay?
That's right. We're starting essentially from ground zero again. So we hope it'll be a more sustainable model for the future.
And from what I understand, this is to be a true fair in the sense of all the kids involved and the whole bit. So
Yes.
it's going to be much more true to form, and I think it's a great thing for the community.
Yep.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Okay. Do we have a motion on the floor? Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay. Sorry, is there any public comment out there for this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move to recommend to the Redevelopment Authority approval of the expenditure of $10,000 from the fiscal year 2016 to 17 revolving fund to support the Carson City Fair as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan that has been adopted by the Carson City Board of Supervisors, and based upon the findings that there is a causal connection between this redevelopment effort and the need for expenses. The expenses are needed to ensure the success of the redevelopment plan, and that the amount of the expenses to be given are minor in comparison to the money required for the overall redevelopment plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I guess with that, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, carries unanimously. Okay. Okay, on to the next item here. It looks like 4B. To make a recommendation to the Redevelopment Authority regarding expenditure of up to $30,000 for special event funding for the redevelopment revolving fund for fiscal year 2017-2018. So this would be for the next round, next fiscal year.
Right, just a brief overview of these. We've received these 3 applications for special event funding for next year. Just as an overview, the $30,000 that's made available is what was recommended by RAC and adopted by the Board of Supervisors. In the tentative budget for next year, the total of the requests that we've received coincidentally match the $30,000 exactly. So as you noted just going through the 3 applications real quick, we have the RSVP for the 4th of July fireworks at Mills Park requesting $7,500. They requested and received $9,000 last year. You may remember some discussion last year about that the city should pay for it and the city should take that on, and that message was passed on to the Board of Supervisors, but they haven't accepted the challenge of taking on the fireworks as of this year. So this request is in again. And I think the city gets a pretty good deal helping out, bang for the buck, right? Thank you. And the Taste of Downtown is in this year, and this is an event occurring that normally their old date was in June, but they're bumped into July by the Epic Rides event this summer, so they're in with their request for $6,500. And then, as I note in the staff report, there's an application that came in after the deadline, but per the policies and procedures that are adopted relating to special events, we can accept applications as long as money is still available. So rather than delay this, I brought this application forward, which is kind of a last-minute proposal, but proposal to put together a plaza space in the Arlington Square. That's the parking lot across the street to the west of the Nugget Casino. they hold special events there occasionally throughout the summer, and they'd like to use the money to set up event tents, plaza stage as an alternative venue for the downtown. And you talk a little bit about other venues like McFadden Plaza that's been invested in, but this would provide an alternative that's larger and has a larger capacity for bigger events than McFadden Plaza. And there are there's often events that have more than one stage venue going on at a time. So anyway, that's the request. I think the applicants for these are here to answer any questions, and I'll be available for questions at this time.
Okay, would anybody like to start here? Any questions? John?
Could you be a little more specific, or can the applicant be a little more specific about the events they have in mind for this? Are there some on a schedule? Or is this like, and what will the money be used for in terms of tents renting or purchasing? Questions, the normal drill questions.
Of course. My name is Derek Sheldon. I'm the Director of Systems. I run the marketing and IT departments for the Carson City Nugget. Kind of the thought process is we're wanting to set up a semi-permanent stage, kind of like the Road to the Future kind of thought process, but on steroids. That way it can kind of start around Memorial Day and go through Nevada Day. The goal, kind of the thoughts, we're going to open it up to charities and other vendors and that sort of deal through the course of the summer, a place to be able to come, set up, kind of like the Epic Rise if they wanted to come and bring in vendors and that sort of deal, a place for them to be able to set up and have events in the downtown community, be able to draw in more people to the downtown. Plans for events and that sort of deal will depend on funding and what we have going on. Depending on how things get laid out, the Nugget is planning on going in for another $16,000, as well as the Adams Board, the foundation, sorry. So that way we can kind of get a good semi-permanent event venue to be able to open up to the community, to be able to come down. The Carson Nugget is wanting to be able to host concerts and that sort of stuff down there. Basically just trying to get a good venue downtown and be able to bring in more energy to the area.
Could you describe the stage, the nature of the stage? You say it's semi-permanent or permanent?
It's going to be something that, depending once again on the funding, it's going to be semi-permanent, something that goes up around Memorial Day and is stayed up through Nevada Day. So that way we'd have the Road to the Future. From my understanding, we were planning on keeping the Road to the Future going, kind of that sort of thought process, and then tear down for the winter. So that way it doesn't become an eyesore and that sort of deal. It'll be something that comes up and goes down. We'll be putting up vendor tents, stuff for the downtown, the DBA, for vendors for like the Epic Rides to be able to utilize. So the stage will be one of those pre-plumbed, from my understanding. Once again, it all depends on the funding that we get. One of those pre-plumbed electrical with the sound system and the lighting for the concerts, for the speaking podiums and that sort of deal, from my understanding, is our goal. Once again, it all comes down to the funding that we're able to raise.
The tents included in what this and other monies are going to pay for?
Yes, we're planning on putting up basically the whole entire venue with the tents and seating, and the stage will all be a part of this plan. Once again, it all depends on how much money we get raised here, plus how much the foundation puts in. And like I said, the Carson Nugget's planning on putting in an additional $16,000.
That leads to a question of Lee. Who's going to own this stuff, and how's that worked out?
So I believe it's paying for a rental. I don't think, I think that's the idea of the funds for this year, is to pay for the rental of a stage. And
yes, it's going to be, that's where the semi-permanent comes into place. It's going to be a rental. So that way we rent it for the course of the summer. The tents and the large, like circus style tents and the stage are quite costly. And so it is basically where the funds are going to be going towards, is the rental for the tenure of the summer.
So nobody will own them.
Correct.
So will you be back in coming years for the same?
Depending on
kind of
how well
request?
it's received with the community and how much energy we bring down to the downtown corridor, the plan of attack from my depends on how well it does, is to go from a semi-permanent to a permanent kind of stage, depending on how well it does, or to come back for perpetual rentals, depending on, once again, how much energy we bring down to the downtown corridor.
I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. When you say temporary permanent, what are we talking about? Is the stage going to be permanent? Are the tents going to be permanent through the summer?
They're all going to be permanent through the summer.
So you're going
with
to
the
put them up
plan
in
of-
Memorial Day, and they're going to stay until Nevada Day?
Correct, with the ability to allow like the Epic Rides events to be able to utilize them, to be able to, there was the advocates and domestic violence to be able to allow them to utilize it for their events and that sort of stuff. They utilized that area a couple times last summer, and we're basically just trying to set up something a little bit more permanent for the course of the summer to be able to bring that energy back downtown.
So how many events do you think projected this first summer?
Once again, that all depend on the funds that we were able to raise. I know the Carson Nugget has discussed at least 3 or 4 different concerts to be able to put into that area, depending on sizing and the funding and what it could be able to attribute. The advocates, other fundraising campaigns for the local charities, basically whoever wanted to be able to utilize it during the course of the summer. The more energy we can get downtown, the more people that we could utilize. The DBA would hopefully be able to get the word out there for people to utilize it as well as any one of the DBA members for the area.
So are they leasing that space if they want to come down and use that?
So for like we've had some minor conversations with the thought process of how the leasing would come down to be. The stage and that sort of stuff, since it's not owned by anybody, that's all just part of the venue. But for like the cost of the electrical and that sort of stuff, like what we did with the advocates last year, was they paid for the electrical and then they kept 100% of their proceeds.
So they put on the event
Yes.
and rent the space from you?
They rent the electrical from us.
Okay.
But the space themselves, because it's not ours, it's rented as part of the community.
Right.
Would be community utilization.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Ronnie, and then Jason.
I understood that this, that space, where Arlington Square had planning permission to be development in the near future. Is that the case, or do you know?
Yeah, there's been talk about development in that area, and that's why we're not wanting to put up anything permanent.
Okay.
That's why we're going for a temporary situation for the course of summer, trying to get that energy down there, so that way there's something to be utilized as the community needs.
Okay, but I mean, just kind of, you say you want to build momentum on this program and kind of continue it, carry on, but then it's going to have a natural thing if a parking garage is built there, it sounds.
From my understanding, the parking garage is going on lot
Unless somewhere else.
9.
Okay.
I know it's in the area.
recall.
I know that that conversation's been in place. I can't
Okay.
remember what lot that's going on to. I don't think that's Arlington. I can verify that later, but I know that's been a conversation of topic further down the road.
Okay, and then just one second question. The Brewery Arts Center has the same kind of setup as, I mean, when they're doing their music events in this last summer and this summer, is the size the same, or it sounds kind
From
of
my
like,
understanding, the Brewery
similar.
Arts Center and their community, from what I've been in the past, their lot has the ability to hold between 200 and 400 people, depending on their layout. The cycling momentum, the potential for the number of patrons that could utilize this, we've estimated at up to 2,000, depending on how well it cycles.
Okay, the question I have, I think, goes back to the beginning. I'm looking at the application, and the application is Downtown Business Association, but you were here on behalf of the Carson Nugget, so I'm a little confused on that. So is it a DBA function? Are they going to be having the lead in this, or is it the Nugget that's going
We're
to have
hoping
the
that the DBA takes the lead on trying to find the vendors and the charities and that sort of stuff. The Nugget is also going to be part of it as well, due to the fact that it is the Nuggets parking lot, but it is something that we're hoping to work together as a community to be able to get that energy downtown with the DBA being able to bring in like Epic Rides, being able to set up vendors and that sort of deal. The Nugget to be able to utilize it for a concert, other downtown business associates and members to be able to utilize it for whatever they're wanting to see fit. Wine walks, to be able to set up all the members to be able to set up booths and that sort of thing in that area.
Well, I
So
think the
we're like-
wine walk is actually, they want people in their businesses, but I just was a little confused on whether it was DBA or whether it was Carson Nugget, number one. And number two, it's very unusual for us, not to say that this is not going to happen, to have a wish without having something concrete. I mean, we know that the fair is coming, advocates, the 4th of July, et cetera, Taste of Downtown, but there is no assurance of what you're going to be getting. And even with Epic Ride, which is a month and a half away, I mean, they would have probably come to you by now. It's just really confusing to have a wish and not something concrete.
This is kind of where the thought process has come down to, and it all depends on, like I said, I'm not 100% sure of what we're going to be doing. It depends on the funding and where we get to it, because if the Nuggets putting up the $16,000 and we were able to put up a little venue, we're able to do a little bit of stuff. If we are able to share some of the responsibility in the setup, we start ending up being able to use more of it because there's more there to utilize. Like I said, the foundation's also coming up with some as well. They're kind of doing like the balance kind of thought process. So it's looking for like the community balancing, and the goal, the bigger it is, the more energy we can get.
Right, I understand. However, the question that I have is, you were not sure about Hop and May Adams Foundation earlier. I mean, you don't have the full commitment, except
The
maybe...
foundation, and Steve has talked about, and they have the commitment to join into the goal behind this. The amount that's going into it is where it's going to come down to the balance, and that's what we're trying to look for funding, is to be able to bring in a bigger venue downtown and to be able to get something bigger that more people can use.
All right, my last question, and this is addressed to Lee. Lee, this is really out of the scope, I think, of what we're used to. Not to, again, say it's wrong, but is there a way that this could be delayed until further information is coming through? Because it's very sketchy. The application was sketchy. It came from the DBA, and now the Carson Nugget, and there's no, we don't know how much the different nonprofits are going to be charged for the electrical. I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions here that, and I know this was put together really quickly.
Yeah,
So
I understand it has been very quick.
It has been very quick, and I know that. And I'm just thinking, because it was so quick, you know, there's not a lot of detail information here that we have always required in the past before we have allocated monies.
The question being, could we delay it? We could have a special meeting of the RAC in June if that's okay. I think we could still get it to the Board of Supervisors in mid-June to, because this funding's not available till July 1st in any event. I mean, I think probably they would like to come away with some, they probably want to know sooner than later that they have some funding available to go get their matching side of it. But we could, I mean, in terms of timing procedure, we can bring it to a future meeting at your discretion. And in terms of, I think this is in the right category, because I've thought back and forth. We have a special event infrastructure category, but this isn't permanent infrastructure. So I think this is a special event for this year. So I don't think it's that category. I think it's the right category. I know it's something different than redevelopment has funded in the past under the special event category, because it's usually a specific events. But you know, if you think of going back to some of the goals that you've said as RAC members in the past, that creating the event, you know, putting the redevelopment money into the event space and enabling the nonprofits to be able to do these is better than just handing the nonprofits money directly. So from that standpoint, I think this is along those lines of what redevelopment has been saying the past couple of years, but we can delay it at your discretion.
My concern is that they do want to get started on Memorial Day weekend with delaying it. However, the other side of it that I see is, are you guys going to go ahead and do this anyway if you don't get the funding?
Our goal is to go ahead with it one way or the other. From my understanding is we were wanting to be able to do this. We were wanting the energy downtown. The issue is the amount that we have to contribute to it. So our goal is $16,000 at this point in time, no matter what. The goal is to be able to throw a little bit more at it, make it bigger, and to be able to share with the community without having to go crazy with what we can have and what we cannot have the ability to do in that area. Because as the Nugget, we do pay for the insurance, we pay for the electricity, we pay for a lot of the little stuff in that area. And so the more community assistance that we get, the ability to open it up to more people is there.
All right, just one last question, and that again, I'm sorry, I'm stuck on the fact that the applicant is the Downtown Business Association. What is their commitment as a Downtown Business Association?
Jennifer Smith, our director, or our advertising manager, is the one that had filled it out. She is one of the Downtown Business Association members. Right? Okay. Don't want to wrong title her. She is the one that helped us fill it out, and she's the one that's been dealing with the DBA, trying to get the enthusiasm. From my understanding is they are committed into trying to bring in more the charities and more of the groups in to be able to fill that area and get that energy into it. Once again, it all depends on what we have the ability to set up, because if I'm able to set up a venue for 400 people, they can't set up and go after the larger community events. So they're committed to assist in filling the venue to what we have the ability to. Does that make sense?
Well, what coordination have you guys already had with the other organizations so far? And to expand on that question, I'd like to know what sort of approval process you'll go through if you have multiple groups coming in for one weekend. I mean, obviously Epic Rides and Taste of Downtown, they're reserved. But if you have other groups vying for the location, do they share? The questions like that become, complicated, and I would like to just see it full all summer if we can get it to happen, but some of these questions seem to make it challenging.
Yeah, and since we have just kind of brought this to the attention, we're still trying to get a lot more of the details together. From my understanding is the DBA, the Downtown Business Association, is going to be the ones that the applicants are going to be going through with the coordination with Jennifer and Dean, correct? I believe that's how it's working out. So that way we can make sure that all the events are scheduled out and properly coordinated. But the DBA is, from my understanding, the prime lead in the coordinating of the scheduling of the individual events, and then working with the Nugget to make sure that we have their electricity and everything set up properly.
I guess I go back to saying they're not here. You're representing mostly the Nugget, and I have no problem with that. But if an application is DBA, and I don't know what the events are, so much of it has already been coordinated, and it would be the new events. I think it would be great. I know last year on Nevada Day, you did not have a lot of events there. It was closed. It would be nice to see it open again.
It would be great to see it come back downtown. And
it would be, but I really think that my opinion is, and please step in, is that this information, because it was put together so quickly, is so sketchy. It's really hard for me to make an educated vote on this without knowing what's happening, because it could sit empty all summer, and then the RAC with it doesn't have a lot of money for these kinds of things. It's just a waste, but I will concede to others.
First.
I would feel more comfortable if I saw a schedule some kind of schedule of what kind of, at least projections of what you think are going to come through the summertime. Because right now, you're only looking at 3 or 4 events through the whole summer.
And part of that big issue is the fact that it's difficult to get a schedule, to get commitment from people
I understand
without a
that.
thought process of what the event and the venue is going to be able to handle.
Right.
To be able to say, hey, yeah, I want to schedule an event that's going to have 2,000 people, and
I
you
understand
can put
that's a building process. I understand that there's a building process here, but at least in this, it would make me feel more comfortable if I saw at least there were projections, who you were reaching out to at least to bring events in. And then the other thing is, like Ronnie brought up, I would like to hear from the DBA.
Okay.
Thank you.
I tend to agree. I'd also like to hear from the foundation. I don't think Steve Neighbors is shy. If he wants to be involved,
Not at all. Unfortunately, Dean and I believe Steve Neighbors both had previous commitments for today. Dean actually had an emergency. He was wanting to be here. He ended up having to go to one of his children's events. They canceled it over the weekend and got rescheduled for today.
I understand. I tend to agree with others on the Citizens Committee that we need more information. We just need, this is cart before horse for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Jason, did you have anything, or, okay.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. More information, either delay or it's you pilot it yourself this year and then come back for expansion next year, something like that.
So, in summary from my thoughts anyway, because we're discussing this at this point, I think that I would like to see it really close to full for the entire time that it's set up if we're going to be funding this kind of event, because this is taking more than half from the $30,000 we have for events for next year. I think the opportunity is out there to be able to really get a lot of leverage out of those funds if it was mostly full. So with the comments from the other members that we'd like to see a proposed schedule, I think that schedule should have some pretty solid commitments, or at least, plans for groups to come in, and then that way you guys can take some time and plan out what you can have available for these groups so that they know what they'd be getting into. So with that, I mean, unless we put a whole bunch of conditions on it tonight, which I can't imagine us figuring out in this group, I'd say, yeah, we hold off is my suggestion.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So just looking at the schedule, if, and for the applicant's consideration and yours, you would, if that's your direction, you would approve the other two and not this one, and send that recommendation forward. We could, let me see, June 5th would be the first Monday in June. If they could get information together by then, more information to bring back to you by that time, we can bring it to you and still get it to the Board of Supervisors on June 15th, which would be before the expenditures.
That sounds fine to me, but at the same time, as I assent to that, I'm not saying how I would go until I heard more information. And I would add that, just from my personal perspective, I'm not speaking for the board, nor am I speaking for RAC. This is really going to benefit one business as much as anybody else downtown, and they're coming up with some of the funds, but maybe a little more would help sweeten that pot.
Well, I don't have any heartburn with, one business, because there's several around. Look what we did with McFadden for 4 businesses. So I don't have a heartburn. I think the big thing is really it's so sketchy, and we need more. I mean, everybody else has to do budgets and all kinds of other things, and this was done so quickly. So hopefully June 5th will work. Putting something together for Memorial Day right now is just around the corner anyway. So I think you just really need more information. So that would be my recommendation.
Certainly, Ronnie, I don't disagree with you, but by the same token, we've told, or I haven't, but this committee has told many the people who come in for money that, well, you need to wean yourself from us and get, on a footing, and the Nuggets on a footing already. And so that's why I brought that up. I'm not trying to extort money from the Nugget. I just think if it's in their parking lot, and so they're asking us for money, and I just throw that out there. I'm not saying I want to hold anybody up because of it, but I'm just interested in making sure that the private sector, if it's going to propose things, and you haven't called the DBA a beard for this, but that's the implication that I get out of what you've asked, because they're not here, and neither is the foundation. So my feeling is that these guys want it, and so I want to see a full, as you do, set of plans as best they can get them together, and having the private sector more involved rather than just half and half.
For me, it's just clarity. I'd like to see projections of who we're talking to. Are they reaching out? Are we reaching out to people? What kind of groups are you guys reaching out to? I'd just like to see more clarity in what's coming.
And yes, and if the applicant is truly Downtown Business Association, which is a nonprofit, that would, I think, help somewhat. Don't you feel that way? Okay.
Indubitably.
And my only comment would just be to give us a high-level idea of how the approval process would work, because, I mean, there's going to be multiple groups coming in, and some groups it looks like would basically have a shoe-in. I just foresee a lot of challenges around that, whether you bring in a group that's not quite ready to do their event there versus other groups that are more than ready and they're in conflict of a weekend, and those kinds of things. So just I would just like to see a high-level framework of the approval process and who's going to be involved in that decision, because if it was just the Nugget, that's a big different story than if it's the community that you guys mentioned, the community effort that you mentioned, and I think that's what we're really looking for to get the most leverage out of the funding from redevelopment, especially considering it's half the funding for next year. All right. With that, shall we look at the other two, the RSVP and also the advocates for the events? Okay. Yeah, I just don't see anyone from RSVP. Advocates in the past has done events similar to this, so unless there's any questions, do we have any questions out here? We know what they're doing, I think.
And they're doing great.
We know what Lisa's doing. It's a great project. And then for RSVP, this is for the fireworks, and $7,500. I assume that they'll probably be having to get additional funding from others, which is mentioned here in the, well, it doesn't mention in the
It was mentioning
application.
some business sponsorships from various bodies.
And they're putting up $7,500.
Right. Okay. Is there any discussion on the RSVP project? We know what they're doing as well here.
I think both are community events that really, Taste of Downtown brings everybody in the world downtown. If you haven't seen them for a year, you'll see them at Taste of Downtown. And we're sitting in our cars or whatever for the 4th of July, but how can we be a community without the 4th of July? So yes.
And I just wanted to comment on RSVP. It looks like, I did, as we've discussed, that there has been some outreach to some business organizations to reduce the amount of funding coming from RAC, so we appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, it looks like there would have to be a motion with some adjustment of the wording. Is someone on the board here prepared to, or the committee prepared to?
I'll be glad to do it.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Okay. I move to recommend to the Redevelopment Authority approval of the expenditure of $14,000, which was the right amount, from the fiscal year 27-2018 revolving fund to support the special event requests in the amount of $7,500 for RSVP July 4th fireworks and $6,500 for Taste of Downtown, and basically ending it there. Let's see. These expenses are incidental to carrying out of the redevelopment plan that has been adopted by the Carson City Board of Supervisors, and based upon the findings that there is a causal connection between this redevelopment effort and the need for the expenses. The expenses are needed to ensure the success of the redevelopment plan, and that the amount of the expenses to be given are minor in comparison to the money required for the overall development. So that's the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? Okay, I'll go ahead and take a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, that covers 4B. Now on to 4C, for possible action to make a recommendation to the Redevelopment Authority regarding the expenditure of up to $10,000 from the fiscal year 2016-2017 Redevelopment Revolving Fund Special Equipment Budget for the purchase of chairs for the community center and tables for the community center and special event rentals. Lee.
Looks like my PowerPoint has frozen up here, but this is a request for $10,000 from the special event equipment budget, if you'll remember from the allocation plan. And again, this is for this fiscal year, not future years, but in the redevelopment allocation plan, there's a line item for special event equipment and infrastructure, so this would fall under that. The Parks and Recreation Department is requesting the purchase of chairs and tables. It'd be chairs for the community center here, as well as tables for here and anywhere else they can be used, that they're available for public events through the Parks and Recreation Department. Eric Klug from the Parks and Recreation Department is here, runs these facilities, and can answer your questions regarding this.
Okay, any discussion here, folks?
Yeah, the only comment I have is originally this was supposed to be used, Eric, come on up. This was supposed to be used for actual tables and chairs for, you know, people who are having events downtown to be able to use. So it has changed a bit. I have no heartburn with the change, but it has changed from the original intent.
Go ahead, Eric.
Right. Yeah, so it's just, we've got 75 tables here that typically are taken downtown for rentals, a lot of them for epic rides, when they're not being used here. Obviously, our first priority is to the community center and the pool. And a lot of them are just in bad shape, as you can see by the pictures that have been included. So that's what I got.
I think the request is in the vein of what we were intending, which was to provide these types of items or equipment items for events to be rented from the city for downtown or for other parts of the downtown area, the redevelopment area. I guess my question is, these chairs in the back of the room are also included. Does that mean they're just going to be completely discarded, or they're going to become part of this rental fleet, so to speak?
So the red chairs that are in the back, once those are replaced, will be repurposed within the community center, which will then allow us to shift older ones out that are falling apart. Because we do have some that at this point we're just tossing them in the dumpster because we can't save them.
Okay, and then what happens when some group wants to come in and rent some stuff from you guys? The new tables will be available and so forth?
As long as they're not in need here or at the pool, because that would be our first priority.
Okay, any questions or discussion out here, folks? John, anything? Okay, all right, well, thank you, Eric, for the information. I think we've got everything we need, so with that, should we see if there's a motion for this one? Jason?
I move to recommend to the Redevelopment Authority approval of the expenditure of up to $10,000 from the fiscal year 2016-17 Redevelopment Revolving Fund Special Event Equipment Budget for the purchase of chairs for the community center and tables for the community center and special event rentals.
Second.
Okay, and any discussion, further discussion? With that, I'd like to take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And the motion carries unanimously. All right, on to 4D, I believe, for possible action. To consider a request for a vendor cart to be located on the McFadden Plaza adjacent to Mom and Pop's Diner, located at 224 South Carson Street.
Thank you again, Lee Plemmel, for the record. And your staff report is attached. This is your first application that's come to RAC since the adoption of the downtown ordinance in about 2006, when it was included in there that the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee shall serve as the vendor cart board for approving downtown vendor carts. I could go into the history of that. I'm not sure how that, but made sense a little bit ago. But you're the vendor cart board. So Doug Kramer with Mom and Pops is proposing to have a vendor cart out front to serve, there's the standards for vendor carts are listed in the code and listed in your staff report. The proposed cart proposes to comply with those conditions. One of the specific things I would note is that the city is currently in the process of adopting the ordinance for the encroachment permit standards, and that's for the occupation of right-of-way. You're approving the cart, and you make your recommendations, and you make your approval based on the hot dog cart. But there are other standards. They'll have to get a permit from the health department. They'll have to meet those standards as well. They'll have to get an encroachment permit for occupying the right-of-way. They'll have to meet those standards. There may be some other conditions that come along with those that fall outside of these conditions, and those would apply. I have some photos that we can use and talk about there. So the proposed location is where the gazebo sits currently. You have a site plan in there. I had it up previously. I think we're all, at least everybody on this board, is very familiar with the plaza now. So this is the location. I can see Doug's ready to answer questions as well, and I'm available for questions now, too.
Make a question for Lee.
Yeah.
Just the
Jason.
definition of a cart for this, because this, I mean, like in this proposal, and there looks like there's a cart, 3 tables, a A-frame sign, and a sink, freestanding sink, which you've just highlighted cart on that in your diagram. Is the whole assembly the remit of our committee to approve?
I think that the whole thing is certainly part of it as a place to serve. So with the downtown encroachment permit standards, it allows seating, it allows tables for displays, and it allows a little more than the application of the hot dog cart stand. I think that, the vendor cart standards were written for the true kind of hot dog cart thing that pushes around. It can be in different locations with the property owner's permission. I think that the standards were written with that in mind. In terms of limiting the size. So I think the application complies with that in that the vendor cart is limited in size that he's operating from. There are other tables there for the condiments and things and napkins and to be able to do transactions from. Those will be subject to the encroachment permit standards. So I would say, yeah, this is a little different than probably what the standards had in mind when they were written in terms of what we kind of thought of as a hot dog cart, but I think it complies with the standards.
Doug, I have a question.
Surely.
It seems like the location for the cart would be very close to your business. Is that correct?
11 feet.
11 feet within the business. But it's not intended to roll around like during the day, just roll in and out for
Yes.
getting it ready and then
Exactly.
taking it in, right?
It's not going to be over by the stage. It's not going to be in any other area other than under that gazebo.
And I would note as a condition, that's one of the standards, that you're approving it at a specific location and subject to your conditions at this location. So your approval doesn't allow it to be moved elsewhere. It would take a new approval to go in front of another property to do this.
And I agree with that.
Chair Ronnie, Vice Chair.
I have a question for you because I have been part of this encroachment report kind of thing they keep sending me, and I was looking through it. This is to attract the younger people and others who may or may not come in your restaurant. How are you going to serve them? Is it going to be on plates and?
Can't be. Per the health department, I've been discussing this project since June of 2016. No, excuse me, 15. Anyway, since about this all came up. And as I've done before, everything would be made in my kitchen, wrapped in my kitchen, packaged, and sold outside in warmers.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I have a question about that. So basically what we have here is we have a rolling stainless steel table and 2 steam tables on it. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you've talked to the health department and they're willing to give you a permanent permit for that?
Mm-hmm. So far, when I talked to the health department, we have over the years, I have put up chafing dishes and on tables and served food
Right.
at many.
And I know they're okay with that temporarily. It's part of
Right.
what I do for a living.
So last year, during 2016, I put a permit in for July 31st to October, till really December 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
And I put up a few times I served food underneath that same concept.
Okay.
The main thing that Dustin wanted to make sure is that I have a sink,
Yes. Okay.
one that's hot water, which
Right.
uses the plug and
That's correct.
has.
Okay.
That was basically when I showed Justin the whole setup of what I'm looking to do someday, is he goes, "You're missing one item, a sink."
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we've had many a conversation.
Okay.
And again, he'll have to be the one to tell me, okay, you can do it this way, you can do it that way, and you follow the guidelines of the city ordinance, period.
Okay. So everything's going to be prepared in the restaurant and stored in the steam tables?
Yes,
Are they electric steam tables?
some will be.
Some will be, or are they going to chafing dishes? What are they?
I have to figure out what the health department will allow me to do.
Okay, so, okay, well,
I mean, I
digress to
really,
the health department.
I can go out on all sorts of tangents saying I'm going to do this, this, and that.
Right.
But it's really up to the health department to
That's
tell me what I'm
correct.
allowed to do.
Okay, thank you.
I never did. You started talking first. Mom Pop Steiner, Doug Kramer.
Okay, on the encroachment permit, it says here, the use of disposable food containers, utensils, and napkins is prohibited unless the food or beverage is served or packaged in a manner to be consumed off-site as carry-out.
Carry out is what it's going to be.
Right, I understand that. But how are you going to be able to determine that they're not going to be eating that on the plaza? Where are they going
That's
to be?
public property. The encroachment area is one area, the next area next to it is public property. Am I wrong in my assumption?
Okay, so you're going to put in the...
Trash. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, it'd be, why would I serve food that I know is going to be disposable and not put trash cans out? Logically, you have to put them out. You have to have my employees empty them every day and use my trash cans. Not. There's a trash can right now that's full on the plaza. It's been there full for 2 days. I think it's Friday it was full. So I don't want to go in that route. You take on a responsibility to serve food outside, you have to have trash cans, period. Does that answer the question, my dear?
I'm not sure it does because of the fact that when it says consumed off-site, I don't think this is what they meant, of course. I mean, you can only read what it says here. I don't know. I think that's something that's going to have to be determined. It can be read any way.
Exactly.
Which is too bad, because they worked a lot on this, so I guess they'll have to work on this some more.
Just a question. I mean, I'm concerned about the appearance of it, especially the stainless steel table as the cart, just because it's by size and on wheels, but it meets nothing like what I would expect a cart to have been like.
As a businessman, I improvised.
Okay, but
Because I only have, you cannot,
Yeah.
the way I understand it from the health department, the cart size that they would like is bigger than the one that you allowed. Because the one that they've told me about was at a Mexican place out of downtown area, and it's large. It has big wheels. It doesn't fit through my front door.
Okay, but the overall footprint of this is, it seems like you're about looking at like a small food truck, and trash cans as well, and it's not very attractive. And I just wonder if there's longer-term plans to do something else, or is this kind of just to start? Or
I have to
what-
start with you to ask you to give me permission to start something, to go to the board, to go with, and ask them to say, okay, look, let's start with this. Let's see how it works. I gave Public Works and Lee plans for a little more permanent thing, matching the stone on the outside, granite countertop, stainless steel equipment, and the ordinance doesn't allow it.
As a cart? But that doesn't
I
sound
said
like,
that doesn't allow that.
but it doesn't sound like a cart.
No, that was a permanent thing, so I can't do that, is what I'm trying to say. So here's the option that is basically, by your guidelines, a cart is a cart. Maybe you have an opinion that a cart should be a certain look. Was it specified in the ordinance?
What I see in the ordinance, Jason, to bolster your argument, I believe is what it says, street vending, cart for street vendors shall be on wheels and the cart shall not be larger than 3 feet by 5 feet. So
My objection is that there's other structures of this. It's not just the cart.
Yeah,
It's
and it's not-
it's 3 other tables, garbage cans, and a sink. So, that's not a cart. And I say, by the definition, part of it's a cart, and if we're calling the whole encampment a cart, then that's a different, it's not meeting the requirements.
Yeah.
It's a cart because it's portable, but it's not an all-inclusive cart like what we're looking at, what we're thinking.
I guess with that, Doug, my question would be, is there some sort of cart out there that would better encompass the requirements of all of this, including the health departments, but also one that meets,
If I only wanted to sell hot dogs, yes.
okay, so it would limit the ability to sell a
It'll limit
variety of
my
foods?
income. Right now, the plaza, let's talk about the plazas, we're going to get there. I see a lot of empty benches. I don't see people that are basically walking up and down. Summer's starting, they're starting to come out, but I look at winter, okay? I need to make money to be able, I already saw what November, December was last winter, and I don't expect anything to change next winter. There won't be any legislation in. I'm looking as a businessman to make sure that my income stays where it's at, stays where it was before the plaza. My income in mom and pops has dropped last year. It has dropped so far the first couple months of this year, and I'm looking at no hardship. I'm looking to increase my income or keep it where it was before the plaza came in. My weekends are good, but my Monday, Fridays, they're down. Now, they've been good this month and the last month because legislation's in. But the way I understand and saw the plaza last summer, you have kids under 30 years old with their kids, period. I'm looking at making it so these kids can eat outside because they're not going into Firkin, they're not coming into myself, and for sure they're not having a glass of wine. So the object of this is twofold. One is for me to start something outside to make more money, to keep my income where it's at. Otherwise, I have no idea. Now, you're talking about things going on at the plaza, events, because there's an event plaza. That's what it's been turned into. I need to participate in those things. I need to have permission to participate in those things. Without that, I've already had at least 3 times that I've done the setup underneath the gazebo, sold the food, put it away. I want to continue it. It's not something I haven't done before. Now, I understand you're talking about looks. I'm talking about money and hardship and future. I like to keep my income where it's at. So I'm asking you all to understand that it's not what it looks like. It's making sure that my income stays during the summer so that I have money to go. Every year, starting back in 2000, when we started something on the streets, I had something during the wintertime, had something during the summertime. Well, now I have the deli and the legislature, which helps me out, but I'm looking at something during the summertime that's going to continue, and that's why I'm here. To increase my income, to keep my income, and have no financial hardship next winter. I'm looking at next winter, and every winter after that. Well, not session, because the deli, I'll give you an example. During February, when it was raining and snowing, the deli did $1,000 less than my restaurant. It's a little crazy because it's never been that way before. The deli went up in the legislature building. Mom and Pops went down. No parking. I'm trying to say to you all, please let me do something during the summertime. Period. Thank you.
John?
Doug, I wasn't going to say much because I get 2 bites at this,
I know,
and then I'm the
CJ.
only member up here who does. But I will just say I am concerned to hear you say that it's not about how it appears. I agree with you. You can do what you want within the confines of the ordinance and the law. But that's both public and private in the sense that it's public ground, it's a public plaza, but it's also with an encroachment permit area, as I understand it, on which you're going to pay property tax. So you have an interest.
And sales tax.
Yes. And you have an interest. Well, you're going to put sales tax on what you sell out there as well as what you sell inside. What I'm concerned about, though, is that you would make a remark like it's not about appearance, because it is about appearance. It's in a public place. But I do want to back away from that and just that's just a comment. It's not a criticism.
words, I'm sorry.
It's just a comment, it's not a criticism, but I bring it up because I was concerned to hear what you said. My only question for Lee is this within all of the confines of the encroachment permit as we have at least at this point fashioned it?
I have not reviewed this, all of the proposal pursuant to the encroachment permit standards that Public Works is adopting, which aren't adopted yet, and which is why the conditions in there. But I think in terms of the area and table, well, I think if this is within the permitted area per the encroachment permit standards, right, in terms of the location. So the location is that the businesses are going to be able to use for an encroachment permit for tables and other merchandise display. This meets the area criteria for that. In terms of the one part is I think that there's going to be discussion about, in particular, is the gazebo. I'm not sure where that landed in terms of meeting the encroachment permit standards, but in terms of the display tables and location, it meets the encroachment permit standards.
Okay, that's fine. I think I'm not because of what I said to you, or not because of what I asked you, or well, partially because of what I asked you. There's still things in the air here. So since I get another bite at the apple, I'm going to abstain on this one. I wish you good, fortune, and as long as you stay within the encroachment area and follow the health department rules. I don't get much say on what it looks like, but I'd encourage you to make it attractive.
Have you been in the restaurant? You've seen my wife. She will make it attractive. I wear jeans. She don't wear jeans.
Supervisor Barrett, just a reminder that actually he's not requesting funding. He's only requesting your approval for the cart at this location. So.
Oh, I understand that.
And RAC is the final decision on this question. So take your bite now on any questions
okay.
you have. 'Cause
Well, thank you. I was a little hezzy on that, obviously. But in that case, I won't abstain. I'll make a vote to support it, because what you do within the area is your business. I just encourage you to make sure that business, and which is in your own best interest, brings people in.
Thank you. I agree. It is in our best interest.
The only thing that I have to say is there's been a lot of problems on McFadden, never mind the parking and stuff. I think there's more people now on McFadden than I have ever seen on the street before, and it will continue through the summer and through the winter. And this is our first full year for that, and everybody wants to be down there. I mean, Sunday I saw lots of people at McFadden, and part of your problems last year was weather-related. Nobody wanted to go out last year. So, all right. I just think that we have to make the right decision as it relates to looks on the whole bit, because there's been a lot of problems there already because they were not thought out first. And I just feel that I think we need to really understand what it means when they talk about no paper products and things like that, which I'm not clear on, honestly. I mean, if you're going to be packaging them in papers and things like that.
Out of an encroachment area into a public area. Yes, isn't that what it's supposed to be? On the encroachment area is the area that I serve. The public area is where they consume.
Okay, so that's the fine line that I guess I don't understand.
Is it not public property?
As I said, it's the fine line that I do not understand, because they're not going to be under your 12 by 12 gazebo eating it, so they'll be out on public property. But I'm thinking where the gazebo is public property. Everything there is public property. And yes, I understand you're going to be paying rent or taxes or whatever, but the whole gazebo is public property as far as I understand it.
I tend to agree that it's all public property, and I've said that in a Board of Supervisors meeting, but I do understand they have an interest as they pay property tax on the encroachment area. It is confusing. And I apologize for my confusion on the fact that I thought I had a second bite at this. I thought all of the citizens committees were what go forward, but I should have figured that one out or understood it. It makes it difficult if we're going to do a final decision here.
I would suggest maybe you bring it over to the Board of Supervisors, who are the one doing the encroachment, so they can make the final decision.
Well, but you and I are on the same page there. I don't know what the law is.
They would know the law. I have no idea. I'm just making a suggestion.
Vice Chair Ronnie?
The other, I guess, issue that I may have, I have no problems with you making money, I think everybody's going to make money, is that there are other restaurants also there. What if they want to do the same kind of cart thing? There will be no room for anybody out there at all, so.
Let me ask this question. You have Firkin in their patio.
Firkin has their patio, but you
Yeah.
have Scoops. They may want to have an outdoor ice cream cart instead of coming in, like people, you're saying they're not going to come in. I would think of all the ones
Oh,
that.
they'll come into them more than anybody.
Well, but what I'm saying is I don't agree with that. It would be easier for the young kids to go up to Scoop's ice cream cart outside and get some ice cream, okay? So there becomes another cart. And what about Bellafiore? I mean, they can serve their pizzas or whatever they serve outside instead of people coming in. So I don't know. I just, what's good for one is good for the other.
Oh, may I speak?
Go ahead.
I understand that totally. One is good, one's for the other. You have a wine place and a restaurant bar. None of them are fast food. You have Scoops that's very new, and they're all feeling their feet, the soups, the ice cream. I've been there 22 years now, trying to make a living, and I've made a living over that period of time. I want to continue that. I have a 10-year lease with a 5-year option. I'm asking this board to move the agenda to the Board of Supervisors, and then please make the decision.
I think that's one option. Another option is you can approve it for this summer. Maybe if you have some concern that this isn't, you mentioned some of the concerns. Well, look, I don't know if you'd be acceptable to that, to bringing it, to having this approval for this season, and come back to the RAC, and you can see, because this is the first one. We don't
Yes,
know. This is
exactly.
It's unusual. It's the first one. I don't know how it's going to affect Plaza or other places. So another alternative would be for a fixed period of time for this approval to see what you like and don't like about it.
John, did you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Adriana, I'm as I say, my confusion, and perhaps if I'd read this more carefully, I'd have seen this, but I was under the impression for some strange reason that about the only outfit that made a final decision on its own was the Planning Commission. Is this a final decision if we take this decision, or and can we write our decision, or make our motion to include it to go on to the Board of Supervisors? Because I have some of the same concerns Ronnie has, but I understand Doug's desire to make money and get going this summer. But getting started and then heading back because it's not working out doesn't sound like a great plan to me.
Well, and I think in this process, you do have a lot of discretion, and with this application, you can either request that it go to the board, like Lee said, or you can just make the determination here and just set it for a certain specific time, certain. So I think you have options. I'm looking at, this is under page 66. Or is this, no, this is, what is this? What is it? This is,
It's the development standards. That section is where it says that RAC serves as the venue.
So, yeah, you do have the authority to make the decision. Now, as a recommending body, you could take it up to the authority if you want. But, I mean, you do have the authority to make a decision, a final decision.
I would say due to the difficulty with the encroachment permit situation and due to the fact that this is a cart, but it's probably what I would call more than exploiting a loophole in the cart definition, it being that it's part of a gazebo with some other tables and some other things, my recommendation would be to move it to the board, because that way the people who are making the decision about the permits can look at this as well. They may even want to decide that there's a limit on the number of carts downtown, which would help the situation, which has been difficult downtown with there's the McFadden Plaza getting some congestion, so to speak. So, I mean, we could make this decision, but with the fact that we don't have control over the encroachment permit makes it almost impossible.
And I have one other point, and again, I have just issues with, I don't know what the intent of this cart motions or regulations were originally. I mean, for me, it seems like they're trying to bring even a third party, someone who's not your business, not a local business, into this area to bring kind of local flavor or some diversity in there. And I'm not, but I don't know that. And same with design standards and everything else. I just don't see, I mean, for me, this doesn't meet it, but I don't know if that was the intent of what the board intended, so you may have background on that.
You made a point. So I've seen now trucks at the end of the plaza. I've seen trucks, food trucks, across from my business. How do I compete? You let them come in as a board, but I can't go out there and compete.
It's not us.
Okay, the Board of Supervisors. Let me go in front of them and ask them why they have that when I can't compete. Please.
Well, Doug, I think you said that you'd like to go before the Board of Supervisors. They're going to be on second reading of the encroachment policy anyway, and most of the people here have not seen it, so I think we are at a disadvantage. I, for one, would like to, if I may, make a motion that this topic, item number 4D, be moved over for consideration to the Board of Supervisors for their final say. So,
With or without a recommendation?
without a recommendation from this board, because we do not have enough information on, as you said, Jason, what was the intent of the food cart and the encroachment and the whole bit. I think we just do not know to make a good decision on this.
I thought that from the beginning, thank you. I thought
Well, you're welcome.
I thought it should go to the Board of Supervisors because this is a business and I'm not asking for any money.
I realize that, but I think I know that the city wishes some standards.
Is there, I've met the criteria, but it's the objectiveness of what it's going to look like, how I'm going to produce it, how it's going to be meet in the health department requirements, and that's all Board of Supervisors.
Plus, I think Ronnie raises a good question. I don't know, I'm not trying to rain on your parade, but it's a good question to say, well, what about the wrappers that wind up, all over downtown? Question that the board ought to look at that as well.
There is, like anything else, if the board tells me I can wrap my food, but I have to give a cloth and napkin like I'm doing the other way, I got to do it one place where my other tables are going to be. It's not hard to do it with the next place.
Yeah.
Throw away, I mean, if it costs me money, it just costs them money, meaning my customers.
Yeah.
Okay, it's no different than I'm going to be putting out those cloth napkins outside.
And the Pandora's box of your competition, as you say, they all want to do it if you
But
get to
only
do it,
if
that
I
kind
put
of
out
thing.
cloth napkins, that will slow them down.
Yeah.
There's already talk about somebody,
Thank you,
a
John.
couple of
Do we
people
have
not
a second?
agreeing to that.
Do we have a second? On Ronnie's motion? Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second, and I would just like to say that I do hope that we come up with some solution, Doug, so that you can get out there and take advantage of what you can for
We will work on something. I have total
plaza.
faith.
Yeah.
There's always compromise.
So, with that, I have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
To move it to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And between now and then, I will find some decorations for the tables. It makes sense. There's so many kids that come down there. There's no food for them. You know it as well as I do, walking around. And it has increased, like you said, over the weekend. But Monday through Saturday, there's a lot of people. Sunday, I won't open. I will keep myself as a breakfast place. But Friday and Saturday night, I've already offered to what's his name, Lee, the manager of Firkin, that we will help financially support the events. So it all comes in together. I have to make money to be able to, and I didn't bring that up during the period of time.
Thank you, Doug.
It will work.
Thank you.
Lee, thank you very much.
Okay, with that, I'd like to move on to our last item, 4E. For possible action to make a recommendation to the Redevelopment Authority regarding an amendment to the Redevelopment Authority Policies and Procedures, Section 3.21, relating to the split of redevelopment funding for arts and cultural special events and other redevelopment special events. Lee?
Thank you. And this item, as you read into the agenda, it does relate to a slight modification that the Board of Supervisors made to the allocation plan that was recommended from RAC going forward. Specifically, there was a split per the policy in the total special event funding between the arts and cultural events and other redevelopment special events. This policy was written at a time when there was ongoing funding for special events, but now the policy, both, not the written policy, but the understood policy that we've been expressed the last couple of years from both the RAC and redevelopment authorities, that we want to decrease the funding for special events. However, at the Board of Supervisors, they wanted to ensure that going into the future, that arts and culture is funded even as other redevelopment special events go down. So, and that 40% was specified very specifically in the policy, and so the proposed amendment would just take that out to allow more flexibility and to make these policy decisions. Rather than having a specific amount in there, is to let's make the policy more general so that through these discussions every year as we do the allocation, we can make you can make recommendations, they can make budget decisions. So that's the purpose of this amendment.
So it looks like John has a comment. John?
Who's the source of the request? The staff?
So if you'll, as the Board of Supervisors made the decision to change that in the budget for next year, I represented that I wasn't sure whether or not the policy needed to be changed, and I would change it if it needs to be changed. And I believe, and after talking with looking at it and talking with the DA's office, that it needs to be changed to reflect the direction of the Board of Supervisors.
The fact that it's not 60/40 is what you're saying. Okay.
Will there be a line item in the future then that will designate this out as 25,000 as part of the budget? Okay, thank you.
Yes, if you look at, I've revised it, I split it out now, so in the table that you'll see, it'll be split out for the future. Yeah.
Is there any sentiment, and I shouldn't get involved because I'm, again, on both of these boards, but does this RAC fear that it could go 70-30 to the arts or anything like that?
I think what the issue is that RAC wants to get out of completely funding special events, but not taking away monies from the arts and culture for their events. So we're going to go away eventually at $5,000 a year as I remember it, but it will always have a permanent line item of $25,000.
It being RAC or the Cultural Commission?
Cultural.
Yeah.
Out of RAC.
Yeah. Because this is the money from the businesses downtown. And so, okay, just asking questions here. I just wonder why we don't go with a 50-50 or what the reasoning is.
And
I understand
actually,
what you're saying. You're saying that the district attorney says, well, if it's not going to be 40-60, then we have to reflect the fact that we have to change what the wording is in there, and that makes sense.
and John, it's not from monies from the downtown businesses, it's from the whole redevelopment region, which mostly, yeah.
I misspoke. I know what you're saying. Yeah, from both redevelopment districts, yeah.
Supervisor Barrett, if it makes you more comfortable too, it would be, I think what this does is to allow you to have those discussions each year and see what the right split is, rather than doing that and then having to amend the policy.
Actually, Lee, that makes me more uncomfortable.
I'm going to presume that the rest of us have read this one, and I think it's going to make things a heck of a lot simpler just for the Arts and Cultural Commission to be able to use the
I've
consistent
read it.
funding.
I've read it. I just,
Yeah,
you know,
I
I just wonder whether we are comfortable going there. And as again, the person who's at both levels, it's arguing over amounts of money that everyone else wants to argue over because they're there.
But if we go down to zero, then they get zero. So this way they're assured 25,000 minimum.
I agree with that. I'm not arguing the specifics of the details of this situation. I'm arguing the fact that everybody will come in for money as years go by. And, you know, they may like to get more, because if you've got no percentages in there, then everybody says, oh, well, there's money. We've heard that earlier.
But if we don't have a line item for any kind of events at all, that's what's going away. So they're not going to be able to come. If you notice, there were only 3 people tonight, 2 of which, you know, were approved. And I think it's already working that they're will not be coming to redevelopment in the future, because the policy change was that we wanted to use it more for hardscape or actual, you know, fronts or whatever.
I understand. I just find that people will find ways to come and ask anyway if there's not a formula. So, but I'm not trying to fight it. I just like, in this case, to see a delineated situation rather than any opportunity. You're right. We know what we'd like to do, but what about 5 years from now when there's a different membership on the board, on the Citizens Committee?
I just think this method would be so much simpler, and it's straightforward, and it still makes sure that the Arts and Cultural Commission can get funding for things to move forward, going forward, and our side with the events reduces. So
I'm all for the arts and culture and both. Using the money the way we're talking about using it. It's just that I've watched government all my life, and I've seen that times and people on boards or authorities or commissions change, and then the priorities in their minds take things off in a different direction. So if you leave it open, people can say, well, wait a minute, let's go back to what we were doing before. And we wouldn't want to go there, but another group of people might.
do I have a motion on this agenda item?
I'll do it. I move to recommend to the Redevelopment Authority approval of a modification to a portion of Section 3.21 of the Redevelopment Authority Policies and Procedures to read. It is the policy of the Redevelopment Authority to allocate redevelopment special event funding to arts and culture special events as determined in the annual redevelopment budget, which may be independent from funding allocations for other special events.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, and with that, I guess I'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that looks unanimous again. At this time, I think we take, let's see, we take public comment. One last opportunity for public comment before we move forward. Okay, seeing none, the items for discussion only.
Yeah, I was going to give you a little bit of update about the allocation plan that was approved, but now through the other items, I've covered the minor modifications, especially with the last item, the minor modifications. But other than that, with the special events and splitting out the arts and cultural events, they approved the allocation plan as recommended by RAC. So that's the only thing I had to report on for A. And for future items, looks like we may have a June 5th meeting for special event. If the Downtown Business Association comes up with more information, I'll get with them on that, but I don't have anything else to report at this time.
Okay, with that, any other RAC member reports or comments?
I just have one thing to say, and as we leave here tonight, we're so happy that there is something happening in the center of downtown. Battleborn Social is open for business, and there is a event there tonight, a grand opening event. So I invite the rest of my board members and Lee and Adriana to come on down and enjoy a brand-new venue in downtown Carson City.
That's great, thank you, Ronnie. And with that, Lee, go ahead. Okay. Yeah. So with that, we'll open it up again for public comment. Okay, seeing none. Is anyone prepared to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.